Hi, everybody. This is Noreen McClendon. Thanks for joining us at Free to Heal. I wanted to talk to you guys about something that won't let me go, and that's the death of PNB Rock. Not because he was a rapper from Philadelphia, where I'm from, or that he died right around the corner from where I live now in Los Angeles, but because it's so indicative of so many things and what I call the Black experience in America, which is an experiment that went extremely well. PNB Rock didn't die because he was being foolish by wearing all of his jewelry. That may have contributed, but in a very small way, because the problem is so much deeper than that. I wanted to talk tonight about how we heal from the experiment that went so well. That doesn't just affect people in the hood, it affects everybody. And that is this. The death of PNB Rock is the result of a long-standing experiment. It started at the end of slavery. And I know I can hear y'all rolling your eyes from here. Everything leads back to that with Black people. Well, in America, unfortunately, that tends to be true. It has its roots in it. So, at the end of slavery, the 13th Amendment said that you could only be imprisoned or enslaved as punishment for a crime. And slavery and that issue, that was an economic issue that they used race or skin color, they weaponized it as a way to continue to enslave Black people. It worked because it told poor white people who were suffering as bad as poor Black people that it was number one, as long as they were better than a Black person, they were okay. And number two, that it was the Black person that was going to take their job and be the source of all of their problems. So prior to that, the imagery of the slave was a jolly person, happy to be around, mammy happy to nurse the babies and take care of the family, and whatever massa wanted was okay, and they were jolly, happily enslaved people. As soon as the 13th Amendment was passed, the imagery changed, and it relegated it. Instantly, we became criminals, we became monsters, we became scary people who were going to in particular, our men were so sex crazed that they were going to rape white women. Never mind the fact that it was more often than not white men raping their slaves, white women beating the slave because her husband enjoyed having the slave, white women who insisted that their Black bucks, Black slaves, have sex with them. Aside from that, they began to criminalize us and make us monsters and super predators, as Hillary Clinton called us Bill Clinton, one of them Clintons called us that years ago. And it has been permeated and continued for many, many years. So, but keep in mind that it was all economic. And in order for wealthy whites to continue the control, they've used a variety of things. One is, again, criminalizing Black lives, Black behavior. The other thing is using the white evangelicals, Christianity, and the abortion issue to get them on board with the oppression of everybody but themselves. So color became a weapon, and it's been so ever since. In Jim Crow, they began to deconstruct the urban cores. What happened is you had white flight, you had employment opportunities to leave the inner city all over America. White Americans moved to the suburbs and they got away from the urban cores. Those cores were then disinvested in economically. Uh, Factories moved out, services were poor, schools became disinvested in. Today, I've said this before, in my neighborhood, there are middle schools where the students haven't been performing at grade level in more than 40 years. So all of this disinvestment happened, and then they poured drugs into the community. It's been documented that Ronald Reagan participated in this through it as a means. Number one, it was a win-win for them. It helped to fund the Iran-Contra war, which Congress was no longer willing to fund. And then it gave them a way to begin mass incarceration, to enslave and incarcerate large numbers of Black people in America. It didn't just touch Black people, and that's where the problem really began for them, is because they made crack, which is the same substance as powder cocaine that white people used, and it was actually a chic drug that only the wealthy could afford. So at one point, it was chic to use cocaine. Then they found a way, and I'm sure with the poor education in the inner city, there was no person in the city, no chemist, that found out that cutting it with whatever they cut it with could create this inexpensive way to administer and to take cocaine, which became crack. Bill Clinton, under his regime, Joe Biden wrote the legislation that meant that crack cocaine charges, it was 100-1. What does that mean? Whatever the sentence was for, if it let's use an ounce, if there was, or a gram of powder cocaine, if it was a gram of crack cocaine or rock cocaine, the sentence was 100 times longer. The First Step Act that was signed by Donald Trump actually reduced that to 18-1. And so that has been a way. So you remove opportunities for employment and ways for families to take care of themselves. You introduce drugs, and then you have the media. And the media continues to promote certain images, certain stereotypical images of all classes of people. If you ever see a drug commercial for AIDS, for diabetes, you don't see blonde-haired, blue-eyed men and women in those commercials. If you see Black women in commercials, usually you will see her alone with children. The stereotypes are many. I learned this when my son was acting and he was young, and I was explaining to a woman whose child was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl in the production, and she said, "Oh, they stereotype my daughter also. She only gets to play the victim because she was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, or she's the precious one." Then there's the brunette Caucasian woman. She's usually very rough and tumble. She's more sturdy than the blonde-haired, blue-eyed one. If you see commercials about AIDS and things, you're typically going to see African Americans, minorities, any health issues. The strong, viral, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, you don't see him in those commercials. These are the stereotypes that media perpetrates and has perpetrated them for years. There was a big to-do about a baby product, and the company made two versions of the commercial. One was with to target African Americans, and it was a single mother with a child. It was for a baby carrier. And the one to target white families had a husband and a wife and a baby. And there was a big to-do about it, and it may not seem like a big thing, but this is where it ties into the healing that needs to happen in our communities and how it ties into PNB Rock's murder. So the imagery that is presented to us is that we can only, as Black people, we can only be successful in certain areas: entertainment, sports, anything where we're entertaining somebody that's safe. And in particular, do that and shut up. Don't have a political view. In our history, there have been entertainers who spoke out, and some were ostracized, some of their careers were destroyed, some had were criminalized for having addictions. I'm thinking Billie Holiday here, who, if you have never seen the movie Billie Holiday, the United States versus Billie Holiday, see it. They criminalized her not because of her addiction, but because they used it because she was speaking out about civil rights. So as long as we're entertaining, shucking and jiving, then we're okay. The moment that we begin to speak on things that matter, it changes. Dr. Martin Luther King didn't get killed because he had a dream. He got killed when he started talking about the Poor People's Campaign and economic challenges. So now back to PNB Rock. In our communities in the 20th and 21st century, record labels have historically signed artists that appear to be up and coming and appear to be getting traction if they have a positive message, and they shelve their music. They will not promote it. They don't promote it in our community. You can listen to how Black women are whores and bitches, and that's fine all day, every day of the week. Saying the word nigger is fine all day of the week, every day of the week. However, when you begin to start talking about the positive things and kings and queens, they don't say anything. They just don't promote those things. So it gives the impression to young people in our community who are not being well educated in schools. They have parents who, if their parents are trying to provide for them, their parents are working, and in a lot of ways, media is very influential in their lives. So if I tell you all the time and I feed you the image that Black people are criminal, they are inherently more criminal, they can only succeed in certain areas, entertainment, sports, that kind of thing, and you don't see anything around you other than that, you begin to believe the lie. You believe the lie, you believe the stereotype, and you begin to live up to it. Studies have shown children of all economic brackets, if in fact they are not receiving attention, they will seek anything to get attention, even if it's only by misbehaving and getting negative attention. People want to be seen. So if I begin to live up to the negative things that you say about me, and then I begin to believe those things, once they have our minds convinced, then the body will follow. There's nothing else behind that. So a man think, so is he. And that starts very young in life. So again, here's where they connect. In our communities, unfortunately, we have been told that we're only successful in a couple areas, but more importantly, we have to look the part. What was it in PNB Rock that made him think that in order to appear successful, that he had to wear that much jewelry? If you see Jeff Bezos, you don't see him with all that jewelry. Any other of the very, very, very wealthy people that you see, they don't wear that much jewelry. They don't spend their money on $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 purses just because. It is usually, again, in our communities, we have been programmed and experimented on to believe and trained and conditioned to believe that in order for us to appear successful, these are the things we have to have. We have to have designer clothes. We have to have nice cars. We have to have the latest tennis shoes. Those things don't appreciate in value. And they also don't produce generational wealth. Another thing that has happened, speaking of generational wealth, a lot of our folks sold their properties after Mama died, Big Mama died. They got us on drugs. We sold the homes. because we wanted it. We fought amongst ourselves and we didn't keep those properties. But remember this. This ties into something I talked to you guys about before, which is how the 2008 2009 mortgage crisis was by design so that it could get land out of the hands of ownership of average citizens. Corporations are now buying up most of the property, most of the starter homes that we used to buy in America. They're being bought by corporations. If you sell your property, don't sell it to corporations. Back on the subject. So because we're selling off our properties, our folks are believing that's the generational wealth that goes away. These are the things, it is now in the hands of corporate people. So we don't own. And remember that the original Constitution, during the time of the original Constitution, only Caucasian male landowners had rights. So if I can take you back to a time where only landowners, because it's going to be hard to get every minority out of ownership. If I can get you out of land ownership and take you back to that and say the original Constitution didn't give you those rights, then I got you and I can enslave you again, whether it looks normal or not. However, again, for us, we've been trained to believe that in order to appear to be wealthy or successful, we have to wear all this jewelry in the first place. It's not necessary. How do we heal from that mentality? Then there is Freddie Trone's family, the man and his son and his wife, a family who were led to believe that it was justified because maybe they're poor, maybe they don't have, that just because I don't have and he has excess, number one, that I have the right to take it from him. But that his life means so little that it's worth taking his physical possessions and killing him. We are an experiment that went very, very well for those people that benefit and have been benefiting for generations. We're not entitled to anybody else's stuff. What we can do is get out and work hard. They always change the subject to talk about, well, what about black on black crime? Well, I'm talking to you about healing us from the ravages of the experiment that let us believe that this kind of thing is acceptable. And I've heard people say, oh, he was caught slipping. No, he shouldn't be slipping about anything. And I'm angry about that notion. I'm angry at the notion that he initially even thought he needed to prove himself or prove his success by wearing that much jewelry. I'm angry about the fact that another family thought it was okay and they were justified somehow in taking what was his from him that he had earned. He worked for that. He earned that. No matter whether you think that rapping is a skill or not, he had to be in the studios. He had to do whatever he had to do so that he could earn those items. And the fact that instead of generational wealth, we have a man, Mr. Trone, who was having his stepson or his son to participate in crime. That was intentional. We were programmed that that's okay in our community. It's okay. Hey, look, get it how you live. Get in where you fit in. Well, all of those things were programmed into our communities, and it was intentional, and we're the ones that have been hurt by it. So now to the healing part. One of the reasons I'm talking about this is I need everybody to understand we have to heal from this. In AA and NA, the first thing they say is that you got to admit that there's a problem. We have to admit that the problem wasn't that PNB Rock wore all the jewelry and was caught slipping. The problem is much deeper than that. It's that we were programmed and conditioned, socially engineered to believe that he needed to wear all that jewelry to be successful. That we have been socially engineered to believe that it was okay for this person to rob him and the woman that he was with of those possessions for whatever reason. Who knows? Have you not gone out and gotten a job? Did you not get educated? I don't know why you did what you did. But whatever the reason, you weren't justified. And you deserve to spend as much time in prison as you can. We need to stop blaming other people and stop blaming the victim in this case. That man was a victim. He had a name. His name was Rakeem Allen. Rakeem Allen. He wasn't just a rapper. If you ever notice, if you ever look on the internet, rapper was killed because of this, rapper arrested. Not their name. Not a young man. If he is in any way was associated with rap, whether he was a big rapper or not, a rapper was killed. Translation, young black person, young black man was killed. We have to begin to change the narrative, change how we see ourselves, change our self-concept. We can be more than rappers that get killed at restaurants. We can be more than rappers and entertainers. We had a president of the United States that looked just like us. But we've also been experiencing a hell of a backlash because of it. Why? Because the experiment also worked really well on poor white people. What am I saying? Poor white people have been conditioned and socially engineered to believe that others, people who have no power in this country at all, never have, not in all of these years, not since its founding, have we ever had any power in this country, but poor white people have been socially engineered to believe that we, or the others, now it's immigrants, gays and lesbians or whatever, that they are the reason why poor white people are suffering. Let me tell you this. At no time have black people, undocumented immigrants to this country, ever had the ability to affect the life of poor white people. But don't think that they haven't been indoctrinated. Even the evangelical, the so-called Christian, has been indoctrinated to believe that America now is some idol that needs to be worshipped and saved from the ravages of leftist liberals who are, and listen, I'm not singing the praises of liberals because I think they have their challenges just as well. But they're not pedophiles running pedophile rings and grooming people to be pedophiles and transsexuals. That is not what's going on. But the very wealthy conservative needs a villain to feed to its people. They need a villain. And that's going to lead to another topic I want to talk to really soon. And that is, you hear all this talk about civil war. What's that going to look like? Who are the right-wing extremists, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers? Who are they going to target? And what do they think is going to happen? This is not the 1800s. But in any event, it's the wealthy that benefit from the division. And the reality is everybody but those that are extremely wealthy are catching hell one way or another. And so I'm encouraging us to heal. But from the experiment and the things that we were told, the social engineering and indoctrination that has us in particular, and this is for black people, that we believe that the only way for us to appear successful is through material things. They don't last. You can't take them with you. They're not going to be there in your grave, and they're not going to comfort you in your last days when you're sick and dying. To heal from the notion that we don't matter one to another, that it's justifiable if I want to take your belongings because I got to get it how I live, that I can't have the same things that you have. If you want what I have, I've worked for mine. I'll tell you how I did it and how I acquired it. That's all you got to do, and I'll show you the way. But you're not entitled to what I have. But understand this, It's not your fault that you believe these things, because we were programmed, and it is continuously programmed through music. If you listen, Molly, you're talking about Molly and Percocets, and who is, why would we want to be on psychotropic drugs as kids? That's cool. You can hear that all day long in our community on blast with kids in the car. And we think it's good because it's to a beat. No. The material things don't matter. It's family that matters. There are values, family values, and we need to value one another and value our lives. So I'm asking us to heal. Let's start talking about healing the misconceptions that we have about whether Rakeem Allen, aka PNB Rock, was slipping by wearing all that jewelry. I'm sure, like me, who had a totally different view of Southern California, that was the USC UCLA football game for me because I was a cheerleader. That's what I saw. That's what I thought when I came to California. Nobody told me that USC was in the middle of the hood. And at that time, one of the most dangerous places that had been disinvested in and all of those things. Nobody told me that. I'm sure his version of he had to go to Roscoe's when he came to LA, that's a icon. That's iconic. Nobody told him which one to go to. But he should have been able to attend and go to whatever Roscoe's he wanted to without fear of having his possessions cost him his life. We got to do better, people. We got to heal. And I thank you for taking your time to listen. And again, this is Noreen. We're Free to Heal. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Please give us your comments. Any topics you want us to talk about, I'd be glad to chop it up with you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.